Hey, what's going on, guys? Have a double feature knife review. So two knives here to review, same time. The reason being is because these are a little bit cheaper. I'd rather put them together because they're extremely similar in a lot of different ways. At first glance, they look like two completely different knives, but they have very similar mechanisms. They have identical blade steels. They're very similar size and price range. Now, it doesn't matter which model here you happen to like more. If you're looking to get something like this, they both have tons of variants on it, particularly the one on top, the SCH A3BS. The model on the bottom is the SCH A4BG. Yes, it's a little confusing, but of course it all does stand for something. It's just like Benchmade. You use a lot of different numbers and letter combinations that represent something, whether it's the type of blade, the shape, the color, whatever. It does mean something. It's not random. And because Schrade, which is made by Taylor, they do a lot of different knives, and they have a couple sub companies as well. There's so many models, it's hard to just name them. You name a series of knives, and then you have a bunch of model numbers because of all the variants. But anyway, the first one we're going to talk about here a little bit. Put this off to the side for a second. First, I'm going to give you specs on both these knives, and then I'm going to give you my opinions on them. So, the first one here is the SCH A3BS. Okay, these are assisted. They have a locking mechanism on the side, okay, just like any lock or safety. When you see the red, it is off. Okay, when you don't see it, it's locked. There is a flipper on the back, which is actually a separate piece on both knives. Both these knives are assisted in the same way. They both use what's called a magic assisted system. Just an acronym for something, which I don't know off the top of my head. But yeah, the magic assisted opening mechanism. So we have a little lock there. The lock is very easy to put on and off. There is a very good stiff click. Okay, it's not going to fall down. All right, it does work. And I have literally flicked this back and forth for probably an hour just to see if it would wear down, if the plastic would break or anything like that. This actually is a really good lock on both knives. All right, but there's the lock. So when you see the red, it's ready to go. Use the flipping action down and it shoots out. The action on this is actually really nice. It's a really smooth action. It might be hard to see, but both these knife models do use bronze phosphorus washers, which is surprising. All right, just a little detail you'll see in a lot of really nice knives. So really smooth action. Both of these knives, and I'll talk more in a second about that one, but they both have really good lockups. All right, brand new out of the box, they locked up perfectly fine, but surprisingly after some use, they still lock up very nicely. Another thing is that the coatings on both of these blades held up very nicely through cardboard cutting. I only use this one for plastic. I only cut cardboard and paper with this one, but there's no visual wear with this coating. I would assume if you're cutting plastics, straps, stuff like that, it would wear off. I've had a lot of experience with the cheaper knives out there, and none of them have a coating that lasts once you start getting into plastics and woods and stuff like that. Anything that's really half abrasive, and yeah, of course, paper and cardboard, which is another form of paper or wood, is very abrasive as well. But specifically plastics, it's just really rigid is the word I'm looking for. And that's what really starts scraping off all of your coating on your knives. But anyway, both of these knives are in the $37 range. Okay, full MSRP is like $66 or something, but realistically, what are you gonna pay for if you wanna buy one of these things? About 37 bucks, and that's Amazon prices, so it's not gonna get too much better than that. All right, so some specs on these. This one here has a 2.9-inch blade. Both these knives sport a 4034 stainless. I'm going to talk about that a little bit because you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. 4034 stainless, what is that? Well, it's X46CR13, duh. What? Yeah, I know, don't worry. Hang in there. I'll explain that kind of stuff a little bit later in the video because I know the majority of people watching aren't metallurgists, and most of you, even though you really like your knives, you don't dive deep into like the steel charts and composition and stuff like that. So for all intent and purposes, you could be really into knives but not know anything about steel, and that's totally fine. That's very common. So I want to talk a little bit about that and maybe give you a reference so you can better understand, you know, what it's going to perform like. But anyway, moving on with the specs, this one is 4.4 inches, 7.3 inches overall, and 4.96 ounces. Both of these knives are almost identical. They both say 4.96 ounces on Taylor's website, However, the other model, the SCHA4BG, on my scale was 4.9 ounces. And this one's 4.96, just like they said. So this one was a little bit lighter on my scale. I don't know if that's just a weird variable, whatever, but you're not gonna be able to tell the difference. In hand, they're all about the same size, okay? Just under 5 ounces. This one has a solid aluminum handles. Obviously, as you can see, they're black. All right, this has a very distinctive look. You will either like this knife or you won't like it. Visually, to me, it's very Star Trek. It's very futuristic. Despite what it looks like, it's uncomfortable. And I can get past looks when I'm doing a review, and I try to keep very unbiased. I mean, I have my personal opinions as a knife person. I'll like the design here or I won't like the design there. But as far as a review goes, I have to completely forget about what it looks like and basically literally close my eyes and hold the knife and handle the knife and open it and close it and use it, keeping an unbiased opinion as far as the function of the knife. This could be the ugliest thing in the world. If it cuts great, it should get a good review, right? That's only fair for review purposes. But no, even though I don't like the way it looks, I don't like the way it feels either. All these sharp corners, although they're not physically sharp, they're all points. There are points everywhere, and ergonomically, it's not there for me. You can see there is kind of a, even though it's kind of jagged and angled a lot, there is a finger choil of sorts in here. So naturally you want to grip the knife in here, which doesn't give you the full grip on the knife. So, you know, what I wanted to do was reach up here, but there's no real spot to put that finger. There's no real finger choil. It's just a point. So, you know, a little uncomfortable for me, a little bit odd just to hold. You kind of don't know where to hold it. It does have a thumb disc, a square disc on here. So if you chose not to use the flipper, you could of course open it with the thumb disc. Nothing wrong with that at all. This is preference. I'm not a disc person. I would much rather take a thumb stud or a cutout in the blade over a disc, but no hit on its functionality. It's not loose at all. I was tugging on it, pulling on it. Okay, it is removable. If you really want to take it off, it doesn't have to be on there. It does have a screw on there, so it is completely removable. Something I wanted to talk about a little bit is the fact that this flipper is it's an independent piece in the knife. It is not connected at all to that blade. Okay, what it does is it pushes up on the tang, which pushes on the blade. Then the assisted or internal spring takes over, shoots that knife out in the open position. But if you notice, when you push down on this mechanism, this flipper, it sits in the frame. Okay, so it's flush. It does not rotate around. It doesn't act as a guard or anything. So it's very unique, okay, in that sense. And there's a couple different models they have with this. It's just an independent piece that starts rotating that blade for you, but once used, it stays out of the way. It's internal inside the frame, okay? This is a frame, this is a liner lock. A lot of people are turned off by liner locks. I think that, you know, you shouldn't be. It's, again, preference. Some people like them, some people won't. Is this a functional one? Yes, it is functional. I did some spine whack tests on this particular one, not this one, but I did spine whack tests on this, and it held up just fine for that. I can tell you, though, that I've had liner locks that failed. Not the spine whack test, but if you basically held onto it tightly and held the blade tightly and tried wiggling it back and forth, eventually you'd get them to knock off canter and you'd be able to close that blade. They fail on a lot of cheap knives, all right? And it's not necessarily just because of the fact that the liner lock is thin. That doesn't have that much play on it, all right? Because there's really expensive knives out there with thin liner locks. It's not the thickness of the liner lock so much as it is the exact geometry of the top of the lock in comparison with the bottom of the tang, all right? So people who make, you know, who are amateurs in making their own folders, you know, liner locks and frame locks and stuff, this is a nightmare for them because it's a learning curve. It's a process that obviously, I know some people, you know, if you watch Gavco and Jeff, Tough Thumbs, and, you know, these guys, they talk about that, how hard it was in the beginning to start to learn how important those minute, you know, angles are when it comes to, you know, a lock of this type. So anyway, this one, although it didn't fail, I'm just saying in general, they have a tendency to fail over time because it wears down a little bit and just the you know, the lock face is a little bit different. I'm not going to get too much details because it's an assumption. I'm assuming this is going to happen. I can't speak from experience on this particular knife. This particular knife in front of me has never failed. The lock worked every time I used it. All right, so don't be afraid of the liner locks. Even on cheaper knives, doesn't mean that they're going to fail or that they're crap. Okay, but just, you know, keep in mind, it is a common issue over time with a little more wear that they're not as secure. Now, that being said, once this knife is in the open position, you can put that lock, that side lock, back on, and this will act as a secondary lock. Okay, this knife will not close even when the liner lock is depressed over, because this other lock is now in the way. So for anyone who was fearful, oh God, I hate liner locks, they suck, you know, they're gonna break on you, whatever, here's a secondary locking feature that will keep that blade from closing on you if you're really, really concerned about it. All right, just something to note there. This particular model does not have a lanyard hole on it. It does have a pocket clip. It is tip up, which a lot of people appreciate. The clip on this one was a little snug. It does work fine. Did find that it grabbed the pocket quite a bit. It's a very tight clip. Very similar to like a cold steel clip or something like that. So super tight, but extremely functional. And it is pretty much a low riding clip. I mean, that is basically what's sticking up out of your pocket. Okay, if you live with that, that's what you get. As far as how it carried, it's chunky, it's bulky. Both knives are chunky. They're just wide, hefty knives. Not particularly my favorite style of knife, but not this one in particular, but this one, it is ergonomic. The fact that it is chunky and wide, it does kind of fit the hand out more. It feels more of like a fixed blade than it does a folder. I'm so used to thinner profile folders. If you like them thin and lean and slick and sleek, and these aren't for you. These are chunky monkeys, but some people do prefer that. All right, so moving on to the other model now. This is the SCHA4BG. I much prefer this knife over that one. There's a lot of similarities. You can see that this one also has a lock. It is lower on the handle. Okay, so ergonomically, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. My thumb's still right there, but it's not as high. Okay, also a liner lock. The lockup is also very, very good and very tight on here. The action, you can see, this is not going to close when that locks on. The action on this one is just as smooth. All right, doesn't take much movement on that flipper piece, and again, identical to this one in that it has a independent flipper on the back that is not connected to that blade. All right, super easy to use, super smooth. This one's much more ergonomic. Finger choil, all right, another depression in the blade. I have medium to large size hands. I don't have huge hands, but they're not tiny either. My hand just fits in here. I find that it's a little snug in this grip here. A little bit of a thumb ramp, functional jimping, not very sharp though at all. There is also another little thumb rest if you want to choke up. That's very comfortable to use like that. Something to note here though, there's jimping and a thumb rest on the back, but it's not in a position that's comfortable for me. With my hand squeezed in here, my thumb lands there. If I were to use this, my whole hand rides down and my pinky ends up on that blade. This is how I would naturally hold this knife in a reverse grip if I were to use that. So that's kind of, for me, just completely in the wrong spot. But not a big deal. It's more aesthetic than anything. Speaking of aesthetics, we have a black coating on this blade as well, but there's like a checkering pattern on the flats, which is really interesting. I actually kind of like that. It adds to the, you know, the visuals of this knife. Do have a swedge on this. It is not sharpened, of course. This one has a different pocket clip and different setup. This one, as you saw, it's tip up. This one's tip down, completely different clip style. All right. I don't like these. If I had to choose between the clips, this clip works a little bit better. I found this one to be a little flimsy. So we got, you know, the Papa Porridge is too hot, the Mama's too cold. There's a happy medium somewhere in the middle. And ironically, I do have a couple other of cheaper Smith & Wesson and Schrade folders that I do really like a lot, which you'll see in future videos. These two I don't like, but I'm going over, you know, why in these videos. But anyway, this pot clip's just a little bit too loose for me. You can even kind of hear it. I don't know, just the acoustics of that, you might, you know, understand if you've had a lot of different folding knives and pocket clips. This one has an internal metal frame, but there's also a rubber mold over top. So it has a very unique look to it, kind of a, you know, rough rock pattern, and then another rubber insert on here. It's a very stiff rubber. It's not like squishy at all. It's very rigid and hard, but it is rubber, so it has a unique feel to it. It's just, imagine a soft plastic or a hard rubber, somewhere in between those two. Visually, I like it a lot better. It's much more ergonomic in the hand. They both, you know, function flawlessly. There's no issues with locks or anything like that. No blade play, no slop. But if I had to choose between these two, I definitely like this one a lot more. However, overall, I don't like them that much. There are other cheaper Schrade models that I really like, and they're cheap. So stay tuned for those models. I mean, just awesome for what you're paying for them. But you know, overall, just not a big fan of either one of these. I just don't like them. They're cheap knives. But let me bring it to this point. If these knives were 15 bucks, I'd say honestly they would fit a lot of people's needs. But for the $37 range, there's too much good stuff out there. There's way too many knives that are way better than these to choose these first, unless you really wanted that aesthetic. If you wanted that particular look for your knife, if you wanted those features, having a lock on the side and, you know, being assisted. As far as the assisted opening mechanism goes, it is a very good one. You know, there's not much else to say about it. Most people, if you've had a lot of knives go through your hands, you know the difference between a cheap knife and a good knife. And there's a lot of great deals out there. There's a lot of cheap knives that are worth having. All that being said, there's also a lot of different levels of people who like knives. There's people who enjoy a knife. Hey, that's cool. I'll play with a knife. I like knives. You know how many people I know in my life that say they like knives, or they say they love knives? They don't know a damn thing about them. They never had a knife more than 20 bucks. They couldn't be happier. God bless them. That's awesome. You know, but then there's also people who have had the luxury of handling or owning or using $50 knives, $100 knives, $200 knives. You know, it goes up and up and up, and then you get an appreciation for those expensive knives. They're no longer not worth it. You know what I mean? You kind of understand what you're paying for in those respects. But anyway, without babbling too much more, they're cheap knives, but I think they're priced a little high for what you're getting. They're not total crap. They're definitely not something that I personally like. This one, horrible, absolutely horrible knife. This one, not as bad, nearly not as bad. But again, for almost 40 bucks, there's too many knives out there that I've used that are better. I'm gonna do a separate video talking about that 434 stainless steel. Both these blades are rocking 434 stainless. Again, it's another name for the X46 CR13. I'm gonna do a video talking about that specifically. If you want information on that, watch that video. But in case you miss it or whatever, what it comes down to is over the last 6 or 7 months, I've been using a lot of these Smith & Wesson and Schrade folders that sport the 4034, and it's very much like a 420 HC. That's the closest thing I can explain it to you. You know, I'm gonna go much more in depth, of course, in those reviews, but yeah, it's like a decently performing 420 HC. The heat treat on these are good. They are soft steels. They will demand sharpening if you decide to use these knives instead of just display them or you know, show your friends. All right. So not the bottom of the barrel. The blades are certainly a lot better than all the Pakistani and Chinese junk you'll see at flea markets. They'll surpass any of those knives. However, they're still very much on the low end of things as far as performance. Okay. And in the $37 price range, I expect more for that. For that price tag, I want a blade that's going to last a little bit longer. I'm not looking for anything crazy. I don't want, you know, super steels. I don't expect the world for this. But if someone's going to shell out 37 bucks for one of these knives and they want to use it, they should last a little longer as far as the edge retention and stuff. But in that steel video in the future, I'll go much more in depth on the 4034 stainless for those who are interested. Okay, that's pretty much it. So that's my little double feature here. Once again, this is the SCHA3BS. There's a lot of different looks to this. There's rainbow ones. There's, you know, if you don't like the black, there's regular silver ones. There's all kinds of looks to this particular knife. And then same thing with this. There's a bunch of different variants on this SCHA4BG model. They're very comparable. Same price, same steel, same size, same weight, same mechanisms, just different look overall. You know, I do fancy this one. If it had a better steel, you know, then we're talking more in the $37 range. But as they sit, I'd pass them up. That's just me. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you have an awesome day, and I will see you soon. Stay tuned because I have some more Schrade stuff that I've been really, really impressed with. In the last, I don't know, year or so, they've come out with a lot of models that are very much worth it. And as I mentioned before, I did another negative review today for CRKT. I love CRKT, and you know, just total bomb of a knife. And you'll see that review soon, but totally disappointed. Not every company is going to have every knife that you love. You name a knife company, I'll tell you a knife that I hate that they make. It's just how it works. So it's not all gold. There's hit and misses out there for everyone, and there's a lot of preference when it comes to knives. Just like guns or any other hobby, not everyone's going to like everything. But anyway, there you go. Hopefully I give you a little insight as to whether you wanted to buy either one of these models. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And I will see you soon. Take care, guys.